So thank you for listening to this episode of Bloodhound Pix, where we're going to be doing something a little special as part of our Horror Not Fear campaign, where we are doing an episode called That's Not Our Podcast, where we have a guest come on and they steal our airwaves and talk about whatever topic they desire. And so while we have little hints here and there of what the topic may be, we're also in the dark with some of it. So it's going to be fun and kind of a wild experience. And I'm glad that our first guest is Scott Murphy, who does the podcast New Horror Express. We've connected with him on the Horror Not Fear campaign, and he talks about, through that, guilty pleasures. He talks about guilty pleasure movies with former guests and so on. And then the podcast itself, New Horror Express, he will kind of interview filmmakers and of kind of indie horror films. And it's a great one to listen to, and I'll have him explain a little bit more than I will. But thank you for joining us, Scott. And if you want to, tell anybody
about the podcast,
and
generally.
yourself. Yeah.
Oh, and about myself.
Yeah.
Okay. So the podcast is New Horror Express, as you mentioned. It's been going now for a couple of years. It started at the start of 2018. It started just purely as a monthly interview podcast where I interview indie horror film directors, and I do bonus episodes every so often for like end of year lists, and I've done a couple of specials based on Dead by Dawn, which is a horror film festival here, and I did a recent special on Fright Fest. And like you said, I've done this kind of bonus series as part of your Horror Not Fear campaign, highlighting kind of guilty pleasures. Now, the podcast, the kind of remit of the podcast is like, one, it kind of looks at indie horror for the most part, and two, it really only looks at modern horror. So I'm only concentrating on horror from the year 2000 onwards. And so it's just guilty pleasures in that kind of time frame, guilty pleasure from the last 20 years and in that series. And it's just been all kind of former guests co-hosting. And there's been 4 episodes so far. And we've done Dracula 2000, Cherry Falls, Dreamcatcher. No, there's been 3 episodes so far. Dreamcatcher. The next one is Leprechaun in the Hood, and that's coming out like next Thursday.
So by the time this episode airs, I think it will be
probably already be out.
Will be out. Yeah.
It'll be out. Fair enough. So Leprechaun in the Hood, it will be available, and you can listen to myself, Adam Stovall, and Abe Goldfarb talking about Leprechaun in the Hood, which was a lot of laughs. We had a lot of laughs.
And no, I'm excited, and you can go on his social media for the podcast, and what's cool about Guilty Pleasures is you actually allow people to vote, so you kind of feel like you're connected in a way, because it was Leprechaun in the Hood versus, I can't remember now,
Seed of Chucky.
There we go.
So yes, it's a monthly bonus series, and each month we put a vote up for 2 films. The next month will actually be 3 films where the people will be voting on, and we get people to vote, and whichever one wins the vote, that's what we go with. And we're also running a competition for this. We're doing this series for a year. There's going to be 13 episodes. So you can win all 13 films if you leave a review on New Horror Express and put the hashtag Horror Not Fear at the end of your review, so we know that it's in conjunction with the competition.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, that's incredibly exciting. And then Adam Storval, or am I saying his last name right?
Stovall, I think.
Stovall, yes.
Yeah.
I know he just did really well on Fright Fest. We got to see the first cut, I think, of A Ghost Waits.
In the Glasgow Fright Fest.
Yeah, but we didn't
Yeah.
get to see but I heard there were some variations a little bit.
Minor. It's minor change. It's mainly to do with the score.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a bit of a different score.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
it's basically the same film.
Okay. No, that was kind of one of our top, I think, of that festival, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the more fun ones for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so getting into our episode now, you are blessing us, or maybe we'll see.
Blessing you, that's a stretch, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah. With your top 5 guilty pleasure movies, and will be some honorable mentions as well. We kind of have a general idea what some of them may be, but I know you're working with the list here and there, so some of them I think we've seen, some of them we haven't, and whenever you're ready, let's start talking about these.
So I pretty much stuck with the ones I said. So I feel like, much like with the episodes, the guilty pleasure episodes, I feel like I should give an explanation for guilty pleasures. I think everybody has a slightly different definition when they think of guilty pleasures. For me personally, I don't technically have any guilty pleasures because I don't feel guilty about watching any particular films. I just, I like trashy movies, and that's
we agree as well.
So that's all good. But my basic definition for it is I also do film reviews both for my website and sometimes for another website. And it's basically any film that I enjoy and like and would happily rewatch, but I couldn't necessarily recommend it to people nor give it a good review.
Okay.
Which is my general definition for guilty pleasure movies.
That works for us, I think. Yeah. We've had some of those during our review sessions.
Yes.
Yeah. And it also leaves quite a wide range of I wouldn't necessarily say that all they're so bad they're good movies are guilty pleasure movies. All of them are guilty pleasure movies, but not all guilty pleasure movies are so bad they're good.
Yes.
I feel like there's a range of you could get a guilty pleasure movie that is as high as a 2-star. So I don't know, do you want me to rattle through the kind of honorable mentions first and then get into the top 5?
If you want to do, I guess your number 5 through 2, and then put
5 through 2, then honorable mentions, then number 1.
Yeah, number 1.
Number 1. Yeah. It's a real treat, number 1, I'm telling you.
Okay.
So for number 5 then in my guilty pleasures list, I should also point out, because it's guilty pleasures horror movies, I've put guilty pleasure horror movies of all time. It's very difficult to narrow down if you include everything, all the different action movies and everything different, so because it's the horror podcast, I thought I'd stick to horror. And also this gives me the freedom to do a kind of all-time list as opposed to the just 21st century list that I'm doing with the Guilty Pleasure series. So anyway, number 5 is Howling 2, also known as Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, also known as Howling 2, Sturba Werewolf Bitch. And you always know that you've got a good film in your hands when it has several alternate titles.
Yes. Now, if you want to give the synopsis for each one, I know, I know I have some stuff to say on Howling too, but
okay, cool.
I'll have you speak first.
Okay, so that Howling 2 kind of directly follows on from Howling 1. It's loosely connected. One of the main characters is the brother of the main character in Howling 1. The basic plot is that there is this evil chief werewolf, Sturba, who lives in a castle somewhere in Eastern Europe, and Christopher Lee wants to hunt her down. Basically, and then he goes to the funeral of the original character from the original lead from the original movie, and then he is joined on this adventure to stop Sturba and her evil ways on her 10,000th birthday. By the brother of the original lead from Howling, Karen Walton, who is played by cult action star Reb Brown, and also a journalist named Jenny. And that, it's bananas. It features a weird cast. It's got Christopher Lee in it. It's got Sybil Danning in it. Like I said, it's got Reb Brown in it. It stars a cameo from British actor stroke singer of the 80s and 90s, Jimmy Neal at the start. It's just, it's bizarre. That's the basic plot. They travel off to Eastern Europe and try to hunt her down. But a lot of other stuff happens. And it's mainly hilarious.
Yeah. So I tried rewatch. So I think I tried watching this when I was really young. I tried rewatching it, I'd say 6 months ago or something, because it was on Amazon Prime in the States here. Mm-hmm. And I was telling Kyle about this when we saw your initial kind of list of like, it's one of those where I watched it and then immediately after was kind of like, I don't even remember what happened or the plot itself, besides the fact that there's like that werewolf three-way thing that happens early on, and where they're kind of turning into werewolves during it. Or besides that, it's like the plot, as you mentioned, is so kind of all over the place. And I don't know, it's an interesting one, and I don't know if Kyle saw it or not, but
I can't remember that I've seen it. I feel like maybe I saw it a long time ago and I don't remember. I don't know.
I think there's just, I mean, it's, you don't watch it for the plot. I have to, you know, I mean, like a lot of these movies, I mean, all of these movies, you don't watch for the plot. It's just so, there's so many things that are kind of hilariously bad. Like, the movie opens with Christopher Lee telling you about Sturba from a book where he is apparently in space. He's just like a kind of shadowy Obi-Wan Kenobi figure in space, and he's kind of telling you the backstory of, you know, and that's how the film opens, because of course it does. And I think like the part of what makes it so entertaining is the editing. It's so bizarre. Like, basically what happens is, I think obviously they couldn't afford to do kind of kills and film them. Like, so all the kind of kills, what happens is, like, somebody will, you know, hold up an axe and then put an axe into a werewolf. And you won't see that happening. What you will see is it kind of cuts to a werewolf in like black space and an axe entering into the werewolf, you know, and like that's how it's, and there's all these kind, and it has like, I do not know how many kind of screen wipe time kind of dissolve shots it has. It has like every type you could imagine, like the screen, you know, like disappears like this, it disappears like this, it disappears like a clock, it becomes like a diamond, and then it's just like the director's like just out of film school, and he's just like, I want to do every dissolve shot ever created. I mean, it's utterly bizarre, and some of the effects are great as well. Like when Sturba uses her kind of laser hand powers, and it's just like Masters of the Universe. And she has like a staff. She has a staff that's got a bat on it, and like like you said, there's like a werewolf threesome. There's all these scenes in her castle where everybody's just lounging about in S&M gear, and if they're not lounging about in S&M gear, there's like these old guys who are like 17th century French libertines with these big bouffant wigs. And I mean, there's so much bizarreness in this film. There's also a great bit that's just like straight out of Monty Python, where Reb Brown's character has an attack on the castle with a dwarf guy who is an ally of Christopher Lee's character, right? And they go up to the castle, and now the castle is guarded by one centurion who has like this massive medieval helmet, but he also has a machine gun. And then and he is taken out by the dwarf who throws a knife at him, and he like it's the pure comedy gold how he dies. He just kind of does the classic kind of and then collapse, and then they just go into the cat. It's it's utterly bananas. And that character, that dwarf character, because like Sturba has like these weird powers that she can like use her voice to kind of drive you mad or something, and you have to use these kind of wax earplugs that are blessed from the Vatican to stop that happening. And so the dwarf guy loses his earplugs, and then it basically allows him. He hears the voice and it makes him go mad, and then it cuts to like a really rubbery looking puppet head, and his eyes just explode out his head. I mean, there's so much packed into this movie. But the greatest thing is genuinely it has one of the all-time great 80s horror theme tunes that like I would say it is almost rival to Dream Warriors as a great 80s theme tune. And you really have to like this theme tune because it is played roughly a dozen times throughout the movie, including in the opening and end credits. So yeah, and the end credits just play over. But the end credits are like basically a highlight reel of the film. It like just goes over the film. And there's this one scene in the movie where Sybil Danning like rips her top off, exposing her breasts, and that is like somebody, the director did an interview, and it was found out that happens in the end credits. It's replayed 17 times in the end credits. It's ridiculous. It's a completely ridiculous movie, and and that's why it's my number 5. I really enjoy it.
Oh, that's great, and maybe I'll rewatch it. I know Kyle.
I mean, now I'm gonna watch it.
So let's hear that number 4 then.
Oh, so number 4 is the wonderfully titled "The Erotic Rites of Frankenstein."
Okay.
So I don't think I know the name, but I don't know if I've actually seen it.
Is this an Andy Warhol one or a Hammer?
No, the Andy Warhol one is Flesh for Frankenstein, which is also very entertaining.
Yeah.
There's like the Andy Warhol movies, like I can't remember the director of those movies, but they're very fun. The Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula. Yeah, they're very good guilty pleasure movies that I would highly recommend people check out as well. No, the Erotic Rites of Frankenstein is directed by the Spanish film director Jess Franco, who is like kind of he direct. I mean, like, so this movie was made in 1972, and Jess Franco directed like 9 films in that year. So like you can tell the quality of. I mean, like honestly, he directed something like over 200 films.
Okay.
Even dedicated Jess Franco fans, which there are some. I don't think anybody's seen all of his films.
Okay.
There's too much. So basically, he's a weird director. I don't know. Like maybe if his shoots were longer, it's like some of his films are actually kind of semi good. Like there's he directed some films in the early '60s. There's one called The Awful Dr. Orloff, which is kind of an Eyes Without Face ripoff, but like it's pretty decent. And there, and some of his films have kind of some competency about them, but because he shot on such low budgets and so quickly and just kept pumping it out, like they vary from being like hilarious guilty pleasures to kind of some of them kind of having kind of interesting artistic moments to some of them being completely and utterly unwatchable. And so I kind of included this because like I felt like I needed to include a Jess Franco film. Like it was between this and he also directed a very entertaining 80s slasher called Bloody Moon that has a great finale that involves a circular saw. This movie, however, is just, I picked it because it's just utterly bizarre. It basically, the basic plot is this: Dr. Frankenstein creates his monster. He brings Frankenstein's monster alive, but he basically does this in the very first scene.
Okay.
His monster is then kidnapped and stolen by a kind of henchman and a blind bird woman who is basically just wearing a cloak, is naked with kind of feathers attached to her, and kind of has like hand glove kind of claws that are also kind of talons. Yeah. A kind of feathery glove with talons on the end, and she's a bird woman. And so, the monster is kidnapped by them, and Dr. Frankenstein is killed along with his assistant Morpho, who's played by Jess Franco himself, and is kind of like an Igor type character. And Frankenstein's monster, who is just a hilarious creation, because this Frankenstein monster is just a kind of big dude spray painted silver. That's all they've done. And and then they've got like this kind of weird head bit that they've kind of to make him more kind of Frankenstein-y, but like it's so badly done you can kind of see the kind of stitching of where it all kind of hangs together. Okay. It's hilarious, but anyway, he's kidnapped. And then they take him, the bird woman and the henchman, take him to this wizard called Cagliostro, who is trying to create a new race called the Pantos race to destroy humanity. And then Frankenstein's daughter, Vera Frankenstein, then has to try and track down Cagliostro at his castle to get vengeance for the murder of his father, for her father. And she does this because initially she doesn't know who kidnapped the monster and killed her father, but using Frankenstein's own technology, she brings Frankenstein briefly to life to kind of get the requisite information. And again, the plot is largely beside the point, but it's hilarious. And so the wizard guy, Cagliostro, is played by a guy called Howard Vernon, who has like the best crazy eyes this side of Marty Feldman. And he basically communicates a large portion of what he's thinking, his dialogue, through the Birdwoman. So like a large part of his role just him kind of staring at the Birdwoman like this. And then that's him telepathically sending the message to the Birdwoman. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of crazy shit happens in this movie as well, and a lot of cheapness. And when you see the kind of Pantos race, it's really very funny. And there's a great scene where Vera Frankenstein is kind of tied up with the henchman who like pisses off Cagliostro, so he doesn't want anything to do with them, and they basically gets Frankenstein's monster to punish them by kind of whipping them, and the first one to fall onto these kind of nails that are like really rubbery looking, it basically dies, and the person who doesn't do that can survive. And there's a whole bunch of things. Also, the Frankenstein is again brought back to life, and another doctor who is trying to follow Frankenstein, trying to save her. He basically comes across Frankenstein, reanimates him briefly to get the clues, but then completely reanimates him. And then Frankenstein attacks him, and then the police inspector who is accompanying him manages to kill Dr. Frankenstein by throwing sulfuric acid on him, and he just like kind of melts, and then the guy is like, Frankenstein was strangling this other doctor, and then he just melts, and then the other doctor, like, it just cuts to the other doctor still having the hands on him, but like bloody stumps and just the hands, and then he just kind of takes them off and goes, "Oh," and that's that, and then we move on to them going to the castle.
So is that one easy to kind of find, or is it like some of Franco's? Is it harder?
It was quite hard,
okay,
but Redemption put out a DVD in the UK, and okay, I think the US as well. So it is actually, so it has like different cuts of the movie. Like the DVD I've got is like German, and it's a slightly longer cut. But it doesn't matter, because the cut literally it doesn't. So the cut I have is like, there is an actress called Lena Romney,
okay,
who Franco often worked with and then ended up marrying, and she's in a bunch of his movies, and she's in this movie kind of in the longer cut scenes with her as a gypsy girl that are completely unconnected to the rest of the plot. So you don't need to watch them. But the cut that is in the Redemption DVD that is available on Amazon Prime here, I don't know if it's available on Amazon Prime in the States,
okay,
it's about 10 minutes shorter, but it just has the Lena Romney scenes cut out, and that's all. And like I say, they do not have anything connected to the doctors, Dr. Vera's Frankenstein, the other doctor, the whole plot with Cagliostro. It's just, she has like this weird narration, and she's just this gypsy girl in the woods. I don't know. It makes it kind of even more insane, but yeah, you really don't need it. So like I say, it is available on Amazon Prime here in the UK, but you would need to check it out in the States.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Oh, maybe we'll try and use that for an episode or something. If Kyle, he's our researcher on that. If he
I could go down that rabbit hole. I know there's some of his stuff is on Shudder here in the US. I don't know if that one is. But
yeah, right. Yeah. Fair enough. But yeah, I mean, like I say, if you're going to check out a Franco film, that one's a very entertaining one to cover. Bloody Moon's very entertaining, and the fantastically titled Vampiros Lesbos is very fun as well. I would utterly avoid Oasis of the Zombies because, I mean, like, yeah, if you want to find out what 80 minutes of zombies bumbling around a desert is like, then dig it to Oasis of the Zombies. Otherwise, do not what I did and dig into Oasis of the Zombies.
Well, yeah, I'll leave that up to Kyle. How far he wants to go down that hole.
I'll probably look at it. I'll risk it.
So let's go. Here, your number 3 then.
So number three is Pieces.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you guys seen this one?
I've seen pieces of it.
But
there we go.
I haven't. Still, it's been on my list for ages, and I don't know why I haven't.
It's on Shudder, or it was for a bit, or some.
I think it still is.
Yeah,
and it has the best tagline ever. You don't need to go to Texas to have a chainsaw massacre or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has different taglines. Because there's one that has another great tagline where it's just that the tagline is, "It's exactly what you think it is."
Yes.
That's great.
And it says it in the trailer as well. Pieces. It's exactly what you think it is. Just see the chainsaw. It's amazing. So again, plot-wise, again, it doesn't matter. It is just very. If you describe the plot of Pieces, it's just a very basic college campus 80s slasher. That is what it is. There's people getting bumped off by someone round a college campus in Boston, even though most of it was actually filmed in Spain. But so it's the kind of random moments that make Pieces amazing. I mean, the film starts with like a kid like doing a puzzle, and then ends up him murdering his mother, like chopping up his mother, and like just in a bloodbath, and then you don't know how that connects to the rest of the film, like to what and you get these little segments of like a puzzle being done throughout the film. And you kind of don't know how that opening scene. The opening scene's hilarious, just because of the way it's done. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, chopping up your mother, it doesn't sound that hilarious, but like the way it's done, it's very funny. And you kind of don't know how that connects to the film for most of the film, but then it does wrap up, and it is done as a kind of mystery. But again, like I say, it is just what makes it such a great film is just the randomness of it, the kind of crazy scenes that happen. There's a scene, so it stars a kind of husband and wife, Christopher George and Linda Day George, who were like kind of American TV actors, I believe. Like I think Linda Day George was in like Mission Impossible or something, and Christopher George was in various things as well. And he plays the detective. He plays like the kind of lead detective, and Linda Day George plays like a kind of tennis player. And they're all. And she has like just one of the all-time just most over-the-top kind of acting moments where she, where she has this, like, I can't remember the exact line, but it says something like, "Oh, when we were out here having fun, he just in there killing her, and then she just screams bastard at the top of her lungs, and the guy acting next to her is just I mean the character is just looking at her kind of baffled, and she's just literally just, and she says it like 2 or 3 times, just bastard, bastard, bastard. Like, you know, it's like the most. It's like a kind of, you know, you just like, this can't be a serious movie. It's like it's something out of an SNL sketch. And there's another scene in it, where that character just gets attacked. She gets attacked by this kung fu guy, and like, because like there's like a mistake of identity, and the kung fu guy just appears in this one scene, and then like and then he's just like, oh yeah, and another character comes into the scene and goes, oh yeah, have you met my kung fu professor? And then that's like we move on, and that's it. That's the end of that scene. There's another great scene where there's like a kind of pathologist at a crime scene, and the detectives come in and ask how the person's died. Now that seems like an obvious question, but not in this fucking scene, because like literally there is a kind of dismembered body near a pool with a chainsaw beside it. That literally, that is what the setup is, but the dialogue is like, what's happening here? You know, like, it's, yeah. And there is, like, possibly the most hilarious red herring ever, where, you know, obviously they kind of set up all these different red herrings for who the murderer is. And one of the red herrings is this guy who is a gardener, who is played by an actor called Paul Smith, who played Bluto in Robert Altman's Popeye, and he has like he is so signposted as a red herring. He has like the greatest kind of side eye ever, where like I cannot even do it. It's amazing, and the whole film is just bonkers, and it's directed by a guy called Juan Piquer Simon, who also directed another batshit crazy horror movie called Slugs, the movie, which is also, I mean, high on my guilty pleasures list. But Pieces outdoes it. Pieces is his guilty pleasure masterpiece, but Slugs is pretty close as well. It's another hilarious film.
No, I didn't know it was the same director, because Slugs is, I agree, another one of those that just, what are they called? What's the Euro here in the States, where it's like Euro trash? Or
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, Euro trash would be probably the yeah.
I guess it's another one Kyle's gonna have to check out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was gonna check it out anyways. But that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's like absolute classic midnight movie material. It's really brilliant.
Perfect.
Great. So yeah, let's do 2, and then we'll hear all your honorable mentions after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 is Troll 2.
Okay.
Bum bum bum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, Troll 2 is obviously, it's credited as being one of the worst films ever made, and it even has its own documentary called Best Worst Movie, and you can understand why. Again, I mean, like, I have tried my utmost to kind of go over the plots of these movies. I don't know what the plot of Troll 2. I mean, like, this family go to this. The great. I mean, like, you know, you're really in for a good movie when the enemy, the kind of monster that is advertised, is not the monster that you get. So you know, even that is a mistake. So it's called Troll 2. Are there any trolls? No. There is a lot of goblins, no trolls. And that is one of the many hilarious moments of the film, where this family go to this town of vegetarian cannibal goblins. So, and it's called yeah. I mean, like, so in case people have not seen it, I know vegetarian cannibal sounds like bizarre. It sounds made up, but basically they turn people into kind of plant food and then they eat the people. So that's how they're vegetarian cannibals. And the town is called Nilbog, which is goblin spelt backwards, which it takes the family a long time to figure that one out. Basically, the one character sees it in a car mirror and realizes, oh, goblin! Oh, there's goblins! God damn it!
Well, because that was one of those ones that they shot around the there were like little clips of it that they would shoot around for some time, where it was the little boy saying they ate them and now they're gonna eat me or something like that, and then you see somebody getting that turns into a tree getting chainsawed and they're laughing because I guess getting chainsawed as you're a tree feels tickles or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the best scenes. That's one of the best scenes in the movie. I think it's they're eating them and then they're going to eat. I think what makes it is the way he says after that. He goes, and in one of the worst line readings ever, he goes, "Oh my god!" Like exactly like that.
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, yeah, maybe even worse than I just did it. But
it was, from what I remember. Yeah, no, that's definitely one to check out for those that are into that.
Yeah, I mean, like it is, you know, like I say, there is a range for these guilty pleasure movies, and this is right bottom of the barrel. This is genuinely so bad it's good, and it's just the randomness of it that makes it. There's various different scenes. There's like a scene where the goblins they make this food with all these green stuff on top that kind of turns people into kind of plant food, and the kind of son of the family, he kind of is on to the goblins, and the rest of the family are oblivious, and he needs to find some way to stop the family eating this food. So, and also there is a grandfather who is deceased who comes back to him in visions, like an Obi-Wan Kenobi type character who has like magic powers that are never explained and kind of differ throughout the movie. But one of the magic powers that happen in this scene is he can freeze time very, very briefly. So it gives the kid like a couple of seconds to think about, how can I stop the family eating this food? Does he tip the table over? Does he just, take the plates away? No, he gets up on the table, pisses on the food. I mean, you don't see him piss on the food, but like it's like you're told that. Well, why did you? You're told he pisses on the food. It's yeah, and there's many bonkers moments like that throughout the movie.
Okay, well, I guess I'm excited to hear your number one, but let's do a brief rundown of your honorable mentions before we get to what can top Troll 2.
Okay. So my honorable mentions are thus. I mean, if you want to stop me on any, I'm happy to talk about them. But it goes like this: The Hills of Ice Part 2. Night of the Bloody Apes, Manos Hands of Fate, Jason X, Rats Night of Terror, Squirm, Silent Deadly Night 2,
Oh.
and and Nightmare City.
Yeah.
It's most of them I've seen. Squirm is always one that I see the cover, and I think I'm always every once in a while I go to press play, and then I haven't watched it yet, but then I'll just flip to something else. It's one of those for me, I think.
Yeah. No, again, it's kind of it's definitely kind of so bad it's good type
Yeah.
material. I actually watched it like last year at the cinema because at the Dead by Dawn Horror Film Festival, the kind of guest of honor was the director of that movie, Jeff Lieberman, who has actually directed some good movies as well, because they also showed his film Blue Sunshine, and he did a slasher as well called Just Before Dawn, both of which are I would actually recommend as films. I like, but Squirm is very very fun, but like I wouldn't like recommend it as like an actual good film.
Okay. And so actually, by the time this episode airs, I think you'll be doing the what was it, the voting for, or the polls for, your next guilty pleasure, which features Jason X.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next one will focus on. I've kind of done different themes for each one. So I did the first one was like bad Dracula movies. We did Scream knockoffs. The latest one for Leprechaun in the Hood was called Chonky Sequels. And this one focuses on sci-fi horror. So the vote will be between Jason X, Pandorum, and Doom. So that'll be your choices for you all to vote on.
Yeah. You also did was it Bad Stephen King adaptation? I think
that is correct. I did Bad Stephen King, which was either going to be Dreamcatcher or Cell, and it ended up being Dreamcatcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm as we were talking about before you started recording, I think it's probably going to be Jason X, and but there also is that I always forget about Doom. I remember when it came out, of what everybody raved about, the first person shooter scene. And that's really all I can remember from it. I've only seen the theatrical version, which I know they say to watch.
I've only seen the theatrical version as well.
I'm a big Carl Urban fan because of
I would say that it's, I mean, I would say that largely that is what makes the movie, like, even as a kind of fun guilty pleasure. I think it would be like a kind of non-essential sci-fi actioner if it was not for the presence of Carl Urban and The Rock. They basically make the whole movie.
Which I know that was kind of marketed. It was marketed as The Rock's. It wasn't like one of his first like big starring roles. Or it was like The Rock's movie.
It was one of his kind of first big starring roles, because that was like back in like 2005, I want to say.
Yeah.
So like he hadn't become like, because at that stage he was still kind of generally marketed as The Rock or Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He didn't have the star power to just be, I am Dwayne Johnson, and unlike nowadays where he's like basically the biggest movie star in the world.
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay, so it's been really fun listening to all these, and I've kind of gotten a glimpse, I think, of these guilty pleasures and them having a randomness about them in their storytelling. But cool. So we've come all this way, and we're excited to hear your number one, Scott. So give it to us.
Okay. So my number one is The Toxic Avenger. And I have picked The Toxic Avenger because I am a big trauma fan, and I've watched a bunch of their films over the years, all of which are kind of guilty pleasure movies, some of which are actively terrible, but a lot of which are really fun. And you know, as a, you know, not just the stuff they've produced themselves, but as a studio, there's stuff that they've put out under the Trauma title that's really cool as well. You know, things like Father's Day and Cannibal the Musical and a whole bunch of stuff. And the thing, I just love the Toxic Avenger character, and I've liked the Toxic Avenger character for a long time. Before I actually knew about Trauma, when I was a kid, I watched the Toxic Crusaders, the Toxic Avenger cartoon, and I had a Toxie action figure with the mop and everything. And you know, this is before I realized they were like based on 18 certificate movies. You know, like so, which again, weird that there was the number of cartoons in the 80s and 90s that were based on adult movies, but that's another discussion, I suppose. Anyway, so yes, I've seen all 4 of the Toxic Avenger movies. A couple of years ago at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, the Toxic Avenger musical came to Edinburgh, and I saw that as well. And so I'm a big fan, and I still think the original Toxic Avenger is the best of the Toxic Avenger films. Although I do think that the 4th Toxic Avenger, Citizen Toxie, actually runs it quite close. But yeah, the original is the best. And I suppose we should go back to me doing plot summations. So, at the start of the plot, it involves basically this town of Tromaville, and everybody's dancing in Tromaville and is very, very happy. But then there's a crime wave. Don't worry, I won't go through the whole plot. Basically, the kind of nutshell of it is that there is this 98-pound janitor called Melvin, and he lands in a barrel of toxic waste, which turns him into a mutant of superhuman size and strength, and apparently New Jersey's first superhero. And that's basically, and then he basically he kills a lot of people with a mop. He literally cleans up the streets of Tromaville from various bad guys, including the mayor himself, who tries to get Toxie killed when he calls in the U.S. National Guard at the end of the movie in a hilarious standoff, and again, it's just the different moments, the different random moments, and also just the characters in it are all bizarre and daft and weird. And I mean, there's a gangster character called Cigar Face, who's called that because he stubs cigars out on people. There is these kind of, you know, those kind of douchebag teens that you get in like various slasher movies. Well, you know, the kind of jocks and stuff. Well, basically, there's a couple of characters in this movie called Bozo and Slug. There are those characters in every slasher movie, but turned up by 11. They're just like so psychotic. And the acting is of these. I mean, the people who act is so over the top. It's like if they're not on cocaine, then I do not know what I don't know what is powering them. It's just every line is just like like it's that's how it's crazy. And the character Bozo dies in a kind of car explosion that has been like reused in a bunch of other trauma movies and has become a running joke in their film studio output.
And that car crash is in Shakespeare's Shitstorm, of course.
Excellent. of course it is, because it has to be. It's like the badge of honor now.
No, I'm surprised we're doing this one. Yeah, as we kind of mentioned when we took our little break, yeah, we watched that for Fantasia, Shakespeare's Shitstorm, and yeah, Kyle just got Trauma now, and we're talking about this early minutes before we came on to here and started chatting with you. So I guess it works perfectly with.
Yeah, I just rewatched it like 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
And it's still great.
The first Toxic Avenger?
Yeah. I just hadn't seen it in forever. And then I've been watching the sequels. I haven't seen Citizen Toxie at all yet, but I'm kind of excited since you say it's one of the better ones.
I think it's a lot of fun, that movie. Yeah, so it's got one of those kind of classic superhero plots where he has to kind of fight like an evil version of himself.
Okay.
So
nice.
Yeah. So it's very fun. I can't actually remember the name of. It has like a reverse name as well. It's something like it's something like the Noxic Revenger or something like that. It's like the evil version of Toxie, and obviously they kind of flip universes. Like they both exist in like parallel universes, and Toxic goes into him, and Noxic goes into the Toxic Avengers universe, and then obviously like Toxic Avengers running around, everybody thinks he's evil, and he's not, and then the other guy is like, why are you suddenly evil? You know, like, and then it becomes this whole thing, and but I think it's really, really funny. I think that one's really funny. But I actually like all four. Like, the second one where he goes to Japan, the third one when he becomes a yuppie for a while and then has to fight the devil at the end. They're crazy films, but
So I guess it's a good one to kind of talk about in terms of, what was it, 2 years ago now? I don't even know how long ago, but weren't they planning on
there's
some sort of like high budget remake or something?
I think it's still in the works, sort of. Well,
that's right. So yeah, it was announced a couple of years ago that Legendary Entertainment were doing a reboot that's being produced by Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz, and is supposedly being directed by Macon Blair, who is like the actor in like Blue Ruin and a bunch of Jeremy Saulnier films. I think he's also directed his own films, but like I've not seen them. I've not seen his movies.
I'm curious if it's one of those things where they'll do like the Evil Dead remake or stuff like that, where they try and take it in a completely different style, like try and make it serious or try whatever they do.
I don't think you can make it serious.
Set it apart,
I'm not sure you can take the Toxic Avenger and make it like. I don't think you could do like a kind of like that kind of thudding, serious kind of like Snyder cut of the Toxic Avenger, you know, like.
I'm just imagining Christopher Nolan like the Toxic Avenger Rises.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine a Nolan verse Toxic Avenger.
Have it be 3 hours and.
Yeah. Well, apparently that's going to be. Yeah, apparently the Snyder Cut's like 4 hours long. HBO is going to show in like 4 episode parts, hour episode parts. It's crazy. But yeah.
It's for a whole nother conversation.
It's a whole other kettle of fish. Yeah.
No, but it was a ton of fun being able to talk about all these, and I know we have some recommendations for our own kind of main podcast now, and it was joy having you on. And I guess outside of your guilty pleasures, one of the things we'll kind of always ask, which this whole segment is designed, you've kind of designed it that way, but is there any newer movies that you, I guess, champion we kind of talked about A Ghost Waits, but is there anything you would recommend that is obscure or entirely independent to our viewers or listeners or whoever? Like, here's a new movie that should get some more eyes, in your opinion.
Yeah, well, I recently was covering Fright Fest for my podcast, and I saw a bunch of great movies at Fright Fest, and my kind of top three from that were A Ghost Waits, who we mentioned. I definitely think people should check that out. There's a movie called The Swerve, which is really a total gut punch of a movie. It's it's really quite depressing, but it's really powerful movie.
And that's done by Dread, isn't it? It's Epic Pictures and Dread Presents, or I think.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. But it's like, I mean, it's kind of like largely kind of, somebody on Twitter described it as like a dark American Beauty, and it's like, it's like a kind of horror version of that, and it's largely to do with the mental breakdown of this woman, and but it's like a kind of psychological horror, and it has a great central performance from the actress Azura Sky, and that was just a really good film. The other one that again was in my top three was a film called 12-Hour Shift, which also played at Fantasia as well, I think. And that's directed by Bree Grant, and it's totally different. It's a great kind of gory, black kind of comic horror crime thriller, and it's just got a bunch of like wacky characters, interesting situations, and a bunch of entertaining kind of gore gags and stuff like that. So it's a very entertaining watch if you're into kind of dark humor. And also on Fantasia, I was doing reviewing for that for another website, and I got a chance to see the new Brian Bertino film, The Dark and the Wicked, which it's a bit bigger film, I suppose, not really an big film, but like it will be out in November, and I was pretty impressed. I was pretty impressed with that. It was one of my favorites from Fantasia, along with the black comedy Dinner in America, which I if you're a fan, if you're a fan of black comedies, if you're a fan of punk rock, then Dinner in America, that's one to watch for.
That's right up my alley. No, like I said, it's been a pleasure, and a ton of fun. I think this is I don't know, in my opinion, became a really great first episode of these, and Kyle can either confirm or deny.
I confirm. Yes. Yeah. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah. And we would love
Excellent. I'd love to
like have you back on to talk other stuff, or just a normal episode or whatever. But yeah, I had a ton of fun and enjoyed having you steal our airwaves and talk about your top guilty pleasures.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this and talk about my guilty pleasure movies, and hopefully people understood my plot summations and I did not ramble too much.
I think you're good.
Yeah. And so check out Scott on New Horror Express, his podcast. He also writes reviews and for the blog, but he'll cover everything from festivals, interviews with indie directors, which are always great. And then he'll also be doing more guilty pleasures, which you can take part in. So listen to him.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Produced by Josh Lee, Craig Drum, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Editing by Kyle Hintz.